Awesome, thank you, and delighted to be here. So I'm Arthur Demerich. I'm the director of the Lemelson Center for the Study of Invention and Innovation. And we absolutely know from historical research that more diverse communities are more inventive. You see more inventions and innovations when people work together across barriers and understand actually what markets want. So innovation to me is very much about meeting a customer need. And you don't understand your customer if you're in a very small, narrow band community. Before we get going on the panel, I do want to point out it is hot. The sun is beating down on you. Take water breaks. If you're getting too hot in the sun, step aside to the shade. The audio is broadcast everywhere, and we're getting a great video recording. Let me introduce our panel, and then we'll get into it. So to my left, your right, we have Chris Pastras, an artist, skateboarder, and skate company owner of Stereo Skateboards, joining us from Santa Monica, California, I believe.
Actually, Echo Park, California, but Los Angeles. It's all good. It's all gravy.
All right.
Los Angeles. Thank you guys for having us here.
To his left, as you will see, to do a little bit of geographic diversity, because you'll see the others are also basically Los Angeles, is Moses Idris. He's from Sioux Falls. Big shout out. Yeah. All right. He is an Ethiopian refugee, graduate of Sioux Falls University, and founder and coach of the South Dakota Stars soccer team. To his left is Tracy Garachia, pioneer of wheelchair motocross, identifies primarily as a skateboarder, lives with multiple sclerosis, and joins us also from Southern California. And then to her left is Oscar Loretto Jr., one of the pioneers of adaptive skateboarding, regular frequent competitor in trick skate, and a filmmaker, joining us from Los Angeles as well.
Yeah, Oscar. Hi, everybody. Thank you.
So I actually want to start with Tracy and ask her, what was it like when you first dropped in? What was it like when you first got into going to skate parks in a wheelchair?
Is this on? Okay.
Yeah,
I actually
hold it close.
I do not remember my first drop-in, but I do recall needing to have somebody help me out of something so very small, like maybe even going up a curve. So I would have to go with somebody else. From that point on, I guess I grew, and there was a lot of fear there. There was a lot of fear, but what I found is that as I went to the skate parks more frequently, I was totally embraced by this amazing community, and people were just willing to push me up and down these things. And when I fell, they all rushed to come to my rescue. However, I learned rather quickly that if I got up on my own and I got back in my chair, which was really hard work then, they were just in awe. And who doesn't want more of that awe pointed at you? But that wasn't my primary motivation. I wanted more of the downhill. I wanted the adrenaline rush. So there was fear, but now, only in situations like that rainbow rail.
Yeah. Oscar, what made skateboarding work for you as a kid growing up? Why did you gravitate toward it?
I think for me, my childhood was normal, but I always say that where traditional sports failed me, skateboarding in the community was the more embracing and accepting. I was the stereotype of being picked on last in gym class stuff, and going to the skate park, you're not on a team or nothing. There's teams and, with brands and stuff, but you want to go skate, you just pick up the board and go skate and have fun either by yourself or with a group of homies. But that's what really resonated and made me gravitate towards skateboarding, was just being able to have that fun on my own,
So, this is a panel about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And inclusion sometimes involves technology, so I want to stick with the two of you for just one more minute. And so, what was the technology like when you first started in terms of helping you or hindering you from what you wanted to do?
The technology for me, if you can see this particular wheelchair, this was a spring, and it was located in the back of my chair. And all of us skating at the time had the same thing, including the man who invented the sport. We also had a different front caster, which involved having a piece of rubber there. And the rubber would wear out, and especially for me being on the beach, and your chair would fail, and you would break your front caster, and of course, everybody knows what happens when you lose a wheel, a skate wheel, or you hit a rock, you're going to fall forward. And that's not very pretty, but hey, falling makes you feel alive. And so then that was my first chair. And I quickly outgrew that chair because, surprise, surprise, I got kind of good fast. And so I needed shocks. And so that all changed. My skating went sky high. The second thing that happened at the same time was the advent of this particular caster, which has a spring in it instead of the rubber, which, you know, sorry for you skateboarders out there, but I can roll over a rock. So when I'm bombing a hill, I'm going to go a lot faster than you, and that's pretty much the only time I have the advantage is in downhill. So yeah, technology has been fabulous, and there's actually another change coming up, and that has to do with a friend of mine who's going to, well, this is a secret. My friend is going to make me my next chair. Don't tell anyone.
I think for me, in my case, the prosthesis was a hard learning curve to learn how to skate with it. And I'm a creature of habit, so once I found the right prosthetic foot, thanks to John Comer, who recommended College Park Industries, because I would always having issues of breaking my prosthetic foot on backside tricks off of stairs or just, you know, out of a big hip or bump, and if I landed all on my toe side on the prosthetic leg, the foot would just snap. And if you've ever seen any of John Comer's videos, like, you know, he skates mini ramps and verts, and then like his foot would just snap. So it was actually through my predecessors that like instilled the knowledge on me of like what technology I would need to further advance my skateboarding. And there's been a lot of advances, but for me, like I said, I keep it simple. So once I found something that worked for me, I haven't changed it or modified it since.
So, Chris, tell us about your experience of getting into skateboarding, how that interplayed with your background and your identity.
Yeah, well, I was fortunate enough to have a godbrother that was 5 years older than me named Rodney Smith, and he went on to found Shutt Skateboards and Zoo York. You guys have probably heard of Zoo York. Yeah, that was my brother's work. So, and yeah, he's still a lifelong skateboarder, but he was a major mentor to me. He was another black skateboarder, turned me on to, you know, Devo, The Police, alternative music, early hip-hop music, LL Cool J. You know, we used to listen to DJ Cool, Red Alert, and all this stuff, and make mixtapes. And so Rodney was really on the forefront of all of that. I was blessed to have him. And then I was a member of the Shutt team, which I liken it to the New York City version of Dogtown. Like, it was just a ragtag bunch of kids. We had a Cuban, 2 Puerto Ricans, 2 black skaters. You know, the artist was black. One of the company founders was black. The art director was black. And we would tour up and down the East Coast. This is 1986. And people would just look at us like they'd seen a ghost. Like, they just couldn't believe. We'd come out of the van with a guy named Sean Sheffy, huge buff, could have been a middle linebacker. And Jeremy Henderson, this older skater from New York City, would have his boom box, and we'd be blaring hip-hop music. And the vibe was so heavy that it was like a record would scratch. And everybody would be like, we've never seen this before. And it was multicultural urban skateboarding, you know. And we'd bring it to the suburbs, and everyone would be shocked. So I was super fortunate to be a part of that movement. Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you, Jay Lee.
That's great. So Moses, I know you're not as much a skateboarder, and we're broadening this to include other sports as we talk about this. So tell us a bit about the immigrant experience coming here to Sioux Falls, and what role sports, especially soccer, has played for you and for other young people.
Thank you. That's a great question. And before I say anything, I just want to say thank you to Levitt Sioux Falls and Innoskate team and everybody that's involved in making this happen, because our city really needs it. And everybody showed up to have a great time. And thank you for yourself for coming here. And give a hand of applause for yourself. Yeah, so I'm originally from Eritrea, which is a country on this side of Africa. I was born there, and when I was 5 years old, there was a civil war that broke out. So I became a refugee at that age, and I've lived in an Ethiopian refugee camp for about 10 years prior to moving here. So I moved here in 2010 when I was 15, and some people say I still look 15, but so it's been, when I first got here, I didn't know much English. Maybe I knew 5 phrases, all of them were bad words, but I had to really adjust to living here in Sioux Falls. But one thing about Sioux Falls is I've been living here for about more than a decade now, and what I can say is that Sioux Falls is a very nice place, and it's very welcoming, and that it has given me a lot of opportunities to grow as a person, to have a career, to be able to support my family, and to work in the community and help out a lot of people too, and that includes youth too. And the only reason why I want to be here is because I'm an advocate for the youth, and I've worked in a lot of youth organizations, and what we're doing here is great for our youth and great for our city too. And so I've started a soccer team about 5 years ago in 2010 when I was a junior at the University of Sioux Falls. And I just kind of started it because a lot of kids, they would go to like a park, a high school park, but they wouldn't have soccer cleats, they wouldn't have coach to help them, so they would just mess around and go back home. So I kind of felt bad for them, and so I wanted to have better opportunities. So I started a team, and with just my little brother and my cousin, and now it's grown to about 60 kids, and we'd have a great time playing tournaments, playing games, and sometimes I would take them to different community events, whether if it's here, swimming. And one of my experience with skateboarding is I was taking them to Drake Spring at by the skate park, and then we were just riding our bicycles. But there's a lot of kids that were skating, and I really enjoyed watching them. And a lot of my kids, since they're soccer kids, they didn't have a lot of opportunity to play, to learn how to skate. But I wish at that moment that everybody could learn how to skate and have the opportunity to do so. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here. And I believe with a lot of hard work and this kind of conversation that we can get there.
That's great. That's great. And you definitely have a community here today that's ready to work with you and help you.
Yeah.
But we also need to be, this is about a very positive story I've heard from all 4 of you, but it's not always that positive when you show up somewhere looking different, whether it's your body or your skin color. And so I want to ask you a somewhat harder question, which is, what makes places like skate parks or even a place like this, Levitt, not welcoming? Like, what do you see that seems to drive people away or just not seem to be a place for them?
Wow, that's a really hard question.
Yeah, who are you directing it at?
And each of you.
Yeah.
So.
So far for me, I think this is one of the most embracing communities I've been to. The fact that, you have Pine Ridge and that community, and just people like this wonderful gentleman to my left. I feel like it's really inclusionary. Big cities, there can be more pockets where you sort of have the black neighborhood and the Hispanic neighborhood and such and so forth. Even as diverse a community it is, and how, we say skateboarding is colorblind, but I don't truly believe anything is colorblind. I identify myself as black because of my mother and my godparents who raised me. They were black, and so I've grown up black as my family. And I'm proud to check that box wherever I go, because sometimes I'm making a marker. Like, I was the 10th homeowner in Echo Park that was black, for instance. There was no black homeowners. So to check those boxes on the loan applications and stuff, it was like, this is changing that landscape, you know what I mean? Talk about equity and diversity. And to be lucky enough to co-own a brand with my partner, Jason Lee, and be, one of the few black company owners, especially when we started in 1992, and a part of the legacy of some of the first black skateboarders, but I was led into it by another pro, Ray Barbie, Yeah, there was Steve Stedham, who rode for Powell early. So there was only a couple. There wasn't much of a footprint of black culture in skateboarding at the time. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. Skateboarding is also one of the most embracing cultures there is. I still think it's important to identify with who you are, whether that's gay or, you know, you're coming over from Ireland or whatever your story is. Keep your story there. Don't lose yourself, but enjoy the inclusivity that skateboarding brings. And this community right here seems really welcoming, so thank you.
Yeah. Just to add on that, that's a really good question, and you gave a great answer. And what he said is that keep who you are, but don't lose, don't be just close to yourself. And a lot of, in my experience and being a refugee and coming from another country, I brought a lot of culture, and I love a lot of things about my culture, but at the same time, I have to kind of go out in the community and learn about people and have an open mind. And where we have a lot of places where there's different diverse cultures, diverse communities, we need to be having those conversations. And this is one of the first places, guys. If people know that you're talking about it and you're making them feel included, then they will be more welcome to come. And that's one of the reasons why I started working with the Levitt too, because Levitt is a great place, and I love coming here, working with them, working with the Levitt team, and they're really awesome people, and they really want to make people included. The only thing is the other person, the other people who should be coming should be a little bit open-minded, because you can't force anybody to come. But at the same time, having those conversations, making people feel included, having the right communication tools, because a lot of people, when you're communicating with them, especially with immigrants, refugees, a lot of our conversation is on social media, and a lot of people are not on there. So it takes a lot of trust for people to come out or for people to send their kids, because you know, as an immigrant, you came here to have a better life, but you're also cautious about what's out there. So just having those conversations and saying that this place is for you, we want to welcome you, and come share your culture, and also having those conversations is really important, and I'm glad we're having those.
That's great. That's great. So, I mean, what we heard here is something about the importance of role models, and then also something about like the community inviting you in. Tracy and Oscar, I wonder if you could comment. You each already spoke about kind of the technology of adaptive, whether it's a wheelchair or prosthetic. Could you say, and as well about the skate park as a welcoming place in terms of the people? Can you say something about like the physical design of a skate park? What makes one welcoming? What makes a skate park unwelcoming to you?
Oh, gosh, I don't get to talk about community?
You can too, yes,
Oh, okay.
please.
Because I have to tell you, because I use a skate park just a tiny bit differently, but basically the same. So I like to, just to put it out there, I do think of myself as a skateboarder, and we're all skating the same but a little bit differently. And I've always felt welcome in skate parks no matter what people are looking like, because the way I look at it is we're all there for the same thing. And I've had some of the most interesting conversations in a skate park about our differences. And it's a fabulous place to learn. And sometimes when you're in a skate park, the best thing to do is not skate. The best thing to do is to talk to somebody and find out who they are, and then you can enjoy the skate together. Okay, so what was the other question?
What kind of design features, the physical environment?
Oh, physical environment.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my other take on the world is the world is not going to become accessible for us. We need to have better equipment. So that's my other cry in life, is instead of not having good chairs, we need to get better chairs for people. I have never found a park that is not accessible for me personally, because I make it accessible. And I am also one of the few people who will find something I can do. That is not always the case. I'm a little bit different. I don't mind going from park to park. Is there a dream park for me? Heck yeah. Would I like the obstacles a little bit closer? Heck yeah. Do I love a clover bowl? Oh yeah. Would I like to get on top of a vert ramp a little bit easier? Perhaps, but maybe at my age it's not even safe anymore. Yay, Bryce! I love you, Bryce.
I find it interesting and fascinating that like everybody's going to look at it through their lens, you know, the skateboarding world, and I have the adaptive lens. But I think we talked about it kind of the other night where the mayor mentioned like, you know, him growing up, it was a rebellious thing. That there was a negative stigma with skateboarding, and I think throughout the decades, and especially now that it's accepted in the Olympics, you know, you're going to have more programming, right? As you're going to have a city that's going to be down to have it as an after-school program versus, you know, 20 years ago when in the early 2000s for me, where it was like, oh, you're a miscreant if you skate, right? But in terms of the skate park and the adaptive stuff, they're barely, you know, we still have a lot of work to go, but they're including us now in skate park design, right? Like Tracy may have, you know, the benefit of being able to skate any park, but not every WCMX rider is the same. So, you know, it's cool that there's finally talk about how do we design a skate park keeping the adaptive folks in mind, whether that's a wider deck space to drop in on the quarter pipe for the wheelchairs, whether there's, you know, less stairs for the amputees to walk up, you know, to going back up on a ramp or whatever, or just more incline and just even level, you know, stages of like beginner, steep slope, steep bank, not a steep bank, and so forth. So I think barely, you know, the inclusion is there. We got a lot of work to do, but it's actually really beautiful to see that, you know, skate park builders are thinking of the adaptive riders and, you know, just pushing the movement of like including everybody, that skateboarding is for everybody.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. So one of the remarkable things about skateboarding, of course, is actually how integrated it is with film. And in fact, a number of you are film producers, have either made films or featured in them. So I wonder if you can comment just on kind of the role of that artistic creativity in innovation more generally. Because skateboarding and I'm curious soccer kind of to some degree too, they're very fluid sports. They're not like American football where there's a play and it stops. Soccer keeps moving, skateboarders keep moving. So how does that relate to kind of how you produce films and that creative expression? How do the two feed each other?
You want me to start that one?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Well, and I almost never stay on script, so I apologize in advance. But I think that landscape is changing so much, obviously because of social media. Back when Jason and I first started Stereo, you had to physically make a video, and that had to physically go to skate shops, and skaters had to go in there and watch the video or purchase the video. And technology and skateboarding kind of weren't so married, so close together. But now everyone's got Instagram, you know, everyone's got social media, and that's how a lot of skaters come up these days. And that's something that, you know, as African American communities, you know, Hispanic communities, we need to bring them technology. Like they, you know, my son's school, we're in a Hispanic neighborhood, they make sure every single kid has an iPad, and that is so important because they're missing this huge gap in their growth because, you know, Olympian skateboarder like Jake Ghilardi or Bryce Wetstein gets to see the past, you know, just on the internet. And there's so much advancement, I think, because of that. Back in the day, it was more word of mouth, magazines. Occasionally you get a video. So technology and media plays just a huge part. And I think we need to make that technology accessible across the board, even in lower income communities. Thank you.
Yeah, I can add a little bit on that because I studied media for my bachelor's degree at USF, and then when I started the soccer team, I started doing photography for when they play games, and then I would do videos, and I would kind of marry that with my soccer team and kind of help them out. And the best thing, my soccer kids, as soon as we finished the game, they would ask me, can you send me the photos? Can you send me the video? Because they like to see themselves performing. And I think that would be the same for skaters too. That if you see, if you've done a good trick, you want to see yourself in the video too. And And for a lot of us as human beings, especially in the city that we live in, we have all our basic needs met, but we want that freedom of expression, whether if it's skating, soccer, basketball, whatever it is. We want that freedom, and if you can do that and then show yourself, it gives you confidence, and that's why we need to be using all the technology, social media, the media platforms that we have to express that and share that with the world. And I think that's if we use that, we can really use sports and then creative aspiration to encourage youth to grow.
Tracy, do you have an observation on this?
The only observation I have about all this technology is I just like surprising my friends with the videos I take of them, and my biggest joy is when I catch them doing a new trick for the first time, or catching them doing something incredibly fabulous. But I'm just really not technology sound.
Oscar, tell us how you got into video production and how it interplayed with then, the kind of skating you do, the tricks you do.
It went hand in hand for me. It was kind of just like a no-brainer because it was the inception of the skate video parts, really, for me. Because without those, like everything here, the panel said too, is great answers and is factors in. But for me personally, it was that medium of video and the skate videos coming out, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have seen John Comer or Og. Representation matters. So I wouldn't have known about those guys. And, I'm just grateful that skateboarding kind of has been kind of the catalyst for the medium, whether it's print or video. And then for me personally, it was just I got injured, and you get injured, and the only thing you still want to go and be in the skate sesh, but what are you going to do if you can't skate? You're going to naturally film. So I just stole my sister's camera and then was like, oh, this is tight. I'm going to make videos. Started make tape-to-tape stuff, right, off of VHSs, and then just self-taught. And I think that's a lot of thing with the skateboarding community, where it's just DIY. You're going to teach yourself to do it, teach yourself to build a ramp, teach yourself how to edit and film. And that's what I did. And then just got an ultimatum from my mother after graduating high school, you're either going to go to school or you're going to pay rent. You can't live here for free. So eventually just all right, I'll go to film school and learn how to make a real movie based off the minimal skateboarding filmmaking experience that I did have. And then that just guided my journey to television and my career now. And so it was a beautiful relationship for me. It flourished and helped develop my career. So I credit skateboarding for that 100%.
Very cool, very cool. So the last kind of set of questions I want to ask each of you has to do with the issue of equity. And we've heard, we know what diversity is, we know what inclusion is. Equity is kind of a newer term that people are using a lot over the last few years. Mm-hmm. And when you think about innovation actually creates inequality. New products in a market economy make some people wealthier and others poorer. It's kind of an inevitable piece of the innovation system we don't really always feel comfortable talking about, because we, of course, like equality. How can you not? And yet, it is a fact of life in a market economy that innovation generates inequality. So when you think about equality and equity, what do these words mean to you? How do you see them playing out in your life and in the work you do?
To pick up on that, for me, any equity I gain, I'm proud to say that I'm doing that as a Black American, and I'm staking my flag in it, so to speak, because there's just an underrepresentation of blacks across the world. I'll go to, I don't want to name names, but I'll go to the boardroom and speak on panels with huge companies, and they'll have 300 employees. And this is in Southern California, and there's 2 black employees. And that's at action sports, businesses, large action sports businesses. So part of my movement and sort of my pride is I'm in there, and the things I've been lucky enough to do with media and, X Games and ABC or whoever, and DuTour and NBC and all these things. I just know, there's 5 black skaters that came up to me at Tampa Pro, which is a local super core event, and said, thank you for being you. thank you for, opening the door for me and all these opportunities, because if I never saw you do it, I don't know that I would have been that confident. So, yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's putting that stake in the flag and representing black culture and always being there for the youth, always being conscious, not staying in the box of what it means to be an African American, because that's different to everybody, but it's okay to be different and still check that box. That's how we get growth, and that's how we don't get left out, is being different and, sounding well-spoken, going to college, doing these things that people might not expect of you if they think you're, of African descent. So, yeah, I just try to do my best and make it to lands undiscovered, if you will. Thank you. I know that was long-winded.
Yeah, if I can add on that, for my full-time job, I work as a diversity consultant at Avera McKinnon at a hospital in town. And so I deal with this a lot when it comes to equality and equity. And with Avera, it's just on how we can make healthcare accessible. But when you work in D&I, you kind of touch on every aspect of kind of human life and how you can make it accessible to everybody. And you touch a great point on if you make an innovation, then it creates inequality, right? And I think when we're trying to be innovative and when we try to invent new products or services, we need to keep who we're serving on mind too. So when we bring whatever service or product to the market, we need to be including those people too. And if you are able to afford it, if you're able to afford to get the product, get the service, or to join to the opportunity, and you need to be asking yourself, how can I make it accessible to everybody who needs it? And for my soccer team, when I first started, I was sharing earlier, we never had soccer cleats, we didn't have a lot. But now there's a lot of people in the community that started reaching out to me and asking, how can I donate, how can I help? And we need to be having those conversations and trying to make the kids or anybody that needs to access it and making it accessible to them. Thank you.
Okay, so where do I start with this one? Some of you probably don't know what the cost of a wheelchair is. The particular chair I'm sitting in is rather expensive, and insurance doesn't cover this. My goal in life is to make sure children have a sturdy chair like mine so they can play.
Tracy, how much did that chair cost?
The particular chair I'm sitting in is $8,000, and the wheels were another $2,000. I am so incredibly grateful that I am able to use this chair. Honestly, I did have a partial grant for it, but my particular situation is a little bit different than others. If you have a disabled child or you grew up disabled, your situation is probably different because you have put out a load of money on this child. But the thing I have to say about inclusion is I would love to see people in chairs in ads. Because don't you want to see somebody who looks like you in a movie, in an ad, on TV? It's when I see some of the kids that I've trained in WCMX, and they're doing these things now, but they're kids, and they go in and you see the pictures of other kids looking at them in the Target, and they're in the ad, and they're in these chairs. Guess what happens? People are buying that. So even the able-bodied kids are loving it. It's like, because now these kids are out, they've got the sturdy chairs, they're playing. Guess who they're playing with? They're playing with the able-bodied kids. They're out there skateboarding. They're just like you. Yeah, and we're all alike. We're just doing it differently. So yeah, that's my thought on inclusion and equity. It's like you with the medical care. We all want the same thing, just differently.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I find it just fascinating and just grateful for everybody on this panel because it really resonates what Chris says because I've been in similar situations, not only being Latino, but just being adaptive or in handicap. And that's another thing about equity in the terms, right? People change the definitions, right? Because, you know, for me growing up, I'm in the generation of like, you know, I'm older than the ADA Act, you know? So like the adaptive people weren't thought of, you know, like, you know, yeah. And it's like, it's a trip to be like, all right, now there's this, you know, wave of like, oh, don't use the word disabled, don't use handicap. For me personally, I don't mind. You could call me whatever you want. I'm not going to take offense. But like now the term adaptive is the new term that's replacing that kind of negative stigma. And I think it's great that equity has that new definition as well because, you know, like the motif here is the common denominator is like representation matters, right? So we need that in all facets of skateboarding and in society. So I think it's just really cool that, you know, for events like this, because I'm super grateful and was hanging out with the Lakota kids the other night and like skating and just hearing their stories. And it's wild because like their stories matter too and they need that representation as well. And it's just like everybody here today at this event is going to take away something that's going to resonate with them and hopefully just share that knowledge moving forward.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. So 3 quick things in closing. First, I think what we're seeing is that skateboarding, soccer, sports of this kind are a place where we can really get people to layer identities and to have your identity as Black American, African American, disabled with the layer of inventor, innovator. Second, you know, this issue of equity is one of the biggest hardest issues of our time, and so those insights were fabulous. And finally, I really want to thank everyone who organized Innoskate for putting together a panel like this, because it's such an important topic. And thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Stay cool.